just before I start, a brief kind of content note. Some of the songs that I'm going to be discussing are from the 19th century, 18th century, so the terms that are used in them are not terms that we use today. So basically, if you hear these terms, don't use them yourself to refer to people, please. Also, that's just a bit of a warning that, you know, some of these terms nowadays are offensive. Also, on that note, some of the concepts that I'm talking about, we have different terms for today, but the language that we use today wasn't in use back then, so that's a whole thing that I'm trying to navigate. So just kind of bearing those things in mind. And also pronouns in songs, when it's referring to characters, I'm generally going to go with they, them, with a few exceptions. So with all of that out of the way, I'll get started. So, I am a queer folk singer, instrumentalist. I'm primarily a performer. I'm not an academic. And most of the songs that I perform are trad, whatever trad is, but that's not what this talk is about. You'll be pleased to hear. So I started a project in 2021 with a singer based in London called Sophie Crawford, and together the project is called Queer Folk, and basically we're looking at queer folk music in all its forms. Today I'll be talking about queer folk song. And one of the first things that Sophie and I did together was a residency at Cecil Sharp House in London, in the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library. So I'll be talking quite a lot about that, but generally about queer folk songs. So, the whole project started with one really, really simple question, which is, LGBTQIA plus people have always existed. That's a fact. So, where are they in folk music? So I'm starting on that assumption because it's true. Fight me. But basically, people have been writing, singing, listening to folk songs for as long as folk songs have existed. Therefore, LGBTQIA plus people have been listening, singing, writing folk songs for as long as folk songs have existed. So, you know, you can look at source singers. I'm not saying that you can point at any particular source singer and say, this person was gay. But also, I'm saying that you can't point at a source singer and say, this person was straight, this person was not gay. And that applies to source singers, you know, musicians on the scene, past and present, characters in songs. So it's that default of ambiguity and kind of, we don't know anyone's sexuality, gender, until they tell us. And sometimes they can't tell us, so we don't know. If there's any queer people in the room, then you'll be aware that that's kind of a bit of a, it's a bit of a false truth, because sometimes you meet someone and you know they're gay. But if you're straight, you're not allowed to say that. So, and yeah, so it basically, this is the point that me and Sophie really started with, is that everything is ambiguous, and so we went in really trying to be open-minded and thinking, you know, we're going to have to do a lot of lateral thinking when approaching these songs, because there are a lot of, you know, songs that a lot of people know, like Willie the Winsbury, which have like explicitly queer content. That verse in Willie the Winsbury where he's like, it is no wonder the king said he, that my daughter's love you have won. If I were a woman as I am a man, my bedfellow you would have been. It's pretty gay. Just saying. So, you know, there's kind of explicit, really obvious ones like that, but both Sophie and I, when we went into this research project, we were like, we could think of a few, but we were like, there must be like loads of songs somewhere, but surely if there were loads of queer ones that were that explicitly queer, we would have heard them. And so we were kind of a bit worried going in about whether we would find loads of explicitly queer folk songs or whether we'd have to do loads of kind of adapting and changing and, as I say, thinking laterally. But what we ended up doing was grouping the songs that we found into 3 categories as we started. So the first category is that explicitly queer folk song, where it's undeniably kind of LGBT themes. The second is where there's more implicit content, and where there's maybe kind of a space for a queer reading of a song. And then the third category is songs which you can tweak slightly, and then all of a sudden they become gay. By the way, I'm using the word gay here and queer as not specific. I'm doing that annoying young person thing of just being really general with those terms. So those are three groups of songs which we identified: explicitly queer, implicitly queer, and then ones which you can alter. So the last group, ones which you can alter, when you really think about it, that's every folk song ever. Because as I say, I'm a performer myself, and a large part of what I do is taking traditional songs, tweaking little things. Sometimes it's just to make something scan better, to make something rhyme, to include a fun word from a different version of a folk song. So that kind of tweaking is something that I already do all the time as a folk singer, and so doing it to make things queer is just kind of an extension of that skill that all folk singers have to learn. And I do that in some of the songs that I sing. The song called Bold Fisherman, where in one of the collected versions, the line is literally, down on her bended knees she fell. So it's describing this woman. But if you just change it to, down on my bended knees I fell, you just change, it's like 6 pronouns in the entire song. You just change them to I, and then if I sing it, it sounds gay. If you're listening for it, that is. If you're not listening for it, it's, oh, he's singing a woman's song. And actually, heterosexual people, not to generalise, some of my best friends are heterosexual. Heterosexual people do this all the time at folk clubs. I've heard so many people sing She Moved Through the Fair, but change it to He Moved Through the Fair because they don't want any gender confusion or to be seen as gay. So, homophobia, basically. But yeah, I mean, not all singers do, you know, not all heterosexual people. So there's those songs that you can alter stuff, and sometimes it is just a small alteration, sometimes it's a really big one. But the exciting category, well, I mean, that is very exciting in itself, but the category which would probably be the most new to you today, if you've not explored queer folk songs, is that of the explicitly queer folk songs. We went in thinking, there's not going to be many, it's going to be really hard, and we were so wrong, honestly. I cannot say how wrong we were. There were so many, and we were so happy. And I'm just going to read you a few lines from some. So this is a song called The Buxom Blooming She-He Man of Pimlico, which discusses packing. Does everybody know what packing is?
Yes.
Does anybody not know what packing is? So packing is when someone will put something down their pants to make a bulge, basically. Often it's trans-masc people, but people of all genders do it. So this song goes into detail about this person packing. The line is, a swell she looked, oh fegs, sir. She'd a pipe so slap, reached from her flap, down to the calf of her leg, sir. So, you know, this song goes into really great detail about this person packing, and it's, I mean, potential misgendering aside, there's not actually any moral judgment placed on this person, which, for a Broadside ballad, I think is really rare, because they're often really moralistic, kind of simplistic songs in a way, but in this song, it's not saying this person is corrupt or evil because they've put a cabbage stump down their trousers. It's not that. The main thing in this is the character is a thief, and that's entirely separate from their gender identity. But they don't really care they've been arrested. So I do think the moral of that song is be gay, do crime. But the final verse in that song, it says, "I wish," said Mary Ann, "I was a man, and away from Besborough Gardens. Whenever I gain my liberty, believe me, friends, I vow, sir, I'll away with the dirty petticoats and sing jolly good luck to the trousers." And I think for a song that is from, 1860, it's kind of, a lot of people feel like that today. And, you know, it just, I mean, the argument, all of this kind of transphobic, homophobic argument is nonsense anyway, that it's like a new trend. And we don't need to find evidence, but the fact, it's literally there. I didn't have to look very hard. I went onto a website and I typed in some search words and it came up with that song. So, you know. And then there's a song called The Female Husband from 1828, which is based on a real story of a man called James Allen, and he was what we would now probably call a trans man. And he says, so this is a Broadside, which we found newspaper reports that it's undoubtedly the same person that this song is about. And this one is presented as a bit of a cautionary tale. So the line is, in the chorus, "So young women all a warning take, and mark what I do say, before you wed, your husbands try, or else you'll rue the day." But, I mean, that's kind of assuming that James's wife didn't know, but of course she would say that she didn't know that he was a trans man. So, you know. But the song does actually kind of, one of the most powerful things in it, I think, is it acknowledges this radical power of queerness, and it really is like, today we have a moral panic. Some people think, you know, society will collapse if people can be themselves. And the line is, "Now for 20 years they lived as man and wife so clever, both eat and drank and slept, and just these things together. If women all could do the same and keep their virgin knot, the king and all his subjects would quickly go to pot." Sounds great. And I'm running out of time. Send me an email if you want some more. I could go on. There's
That's all right. You've still got 10 minutes. We started late.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I'll read you a few more. There's a song called "The Tailor's Breeches," which is about a tailor who loves wearing women's clothes, and he just does it for the joy of it. And in this one version I found, he's not ridiculed for it. It's just, so the line is, "If you lend me your petticoats, I'll dance like a maid." He puts on the petticoats, dances like a maid. He does get his trousers and his wallet stolen, but at the end of the song he says, "If ever I get my trousers back, I'm never going to dance again." So the problem is not wearing women's clothes, it's dancing. Then there's a song called "I Am a Gay Fellow," which maybe it wasn't intended that way when it was written, but when it has a verse that goes, "The birds they shall sing and the valleys shall ring, while the boys in the chorus so gallant behave. Lay me down flat on the broad of my back, crying there goes a hearty cock down to the grave." You know, there's no arguing with that. One more. An early music hall song. "Bet mild she was a servant maid, and she a place had got, to wait upon two ladies fair. These ladies' name was Scott. Now Bet a certain talent had, for she anything could handle. And for these ladies, every night, she used a large, thick candle. So, push, push, shove, shove, drive away with all your might. Push, push, shove, shove, 'tis that yields delight." So, you know, it's all there in folk song. So, moving on to the third category that I mentioned, the implicitly queer category, the songs that were open to a queer reading. And this is one that, when we first started finding these songs in the archives, we had this category, but very soon it fell apart because we realised that if there's a song that is in this category that you can apply a queer reading to, then it's a queer folk song, because you're not changing anything with the song, you're not changing the lyrics, the song is staying exactly as it was. All that's changing is your brain. You're just kind of flipping a switch, and there's like a mental reframing. And so it's not really a category. It's kind of, and that was maybe the kind of breakthrough moment for me in the research, was being like, hang on a sec, I just need to listen to everything differently. And it's something that as queer people that we do all the time. You know, you know, I read Lord of the Rings at the minute, and it's like, Sam and Frodo, it's so gay! Or like Robin Hood living in the wood with a bunch of men. Who knows what they got up to? You know, all these, so it's kind of, you constantly have to do that as a queer person. But it's reminding yourself to do that with folk songs. And yeah, and obviously, you know, you can read songs in numerous ways, and it's, but it's more about the act of questioning that and that mental reframing. So, yeah, I'd say that's the thing that really jumped out for me was the applying a queer lens and with an open mind, and like looking at new songs, but also looking at songs that you've known for all your life. So this is something that I did just the other day. I was listening to, do you know the song Lord Franklin? Mm-hmm. So I was listening to that song, and it just hit me, in this song, in some versions, not the most common versions, it's from the perspective of Lord Franklin's wife, but in the most common version that kind of most people sing, there is no kind of mention about the fact that it's his wife singing it, and it actually starts with that sailor saying, "Was homeward bound one night on the deep, swinging in my hammock I fell asleep," and it's kind of from the perspective of a male sailor. But the song ends with this line, £10,000 would I freely give to know on earth that my Franklin lives. And often in folk songs, when it's talking about like Nelson or whatever, there's always this kind of collective our. But something just kind of really made me go, oh, the singer of this song is saying like my Franklin, and it's clearly this kind of love. What kind of love it is, who knows, but there's this kind of love there for this man that is being expressed in this song. So, you know, it's a constant process of checking in when you're listening to songs, checking in when you're singing songs, and it's not just for singers, it's not just for queer people. That's my time up. It's not just for singers, it's not just for queer people, it's for everybody to do. So, you know, challenge yourself, sit and listen to songs that you've known for ages and think, hang on, do I know everything that's going on here? Could something different be happening? And yeah, so that kind of really drove it home for me in terms of like what is queer folk music. It's kind of, if you feel like something is queer, then great, it is. You know. So I guess yeah. So a couple of takeaways. Queer people have always existed. We already knew that, but this doesn't disprove that. You know, this is just kind of being like, yes, queer people have always existed. We don't need to give you more evidence, but it's there. Secondly, and this is an important thing, if you're a singer, you don't owe anybody a coming out. If you want to sing queer folk songs, great. There's no pressure to do it. Also, I was singing queer folk songs before I came out, whatever coming out is. We're all coming out all the time. I was singing songs where I was singing about male love interests as a male narrator, and nobody fucking noticed. Excuse me, nobody noticed in the audience. People just went straight over their heads. So, like, you know, if you don't have to sing queer folk songs if you don't want to. But also, if you do, some people probably won't even notice because they're not switched on. Some people might say, like they said to me in a folk club, "It's nice to hear a young man singing a woman's song." Is it? So yeah, you don't owe anybody you're coming out. Listen with an open mind, sing with an open mind, change whatever folk songs you want. Rory sang some great altered, queered folk songs in the sing-around last night, and I think it's great. You know, you can change songs, you can leave songs the same, but there is so much out there. Yeah, and basically, the one thing actually I will say, just before I finish, about singing queer folk songs, is that some people might not notice, but sometimes there is one queer person in the room, and I've had that where I've sung a song and I thought, oh, no one notices this, why am I doing this? And then someone will say, what you sang then, I really relate to. And I've been in that position where I've been in an audience thinking, oh, no one here is, and then someone sings a song and you're like, ah, I get it. And you feel seen, so, you know, I would say it's absolutely worth doing. And yeah, so just the importance of an open mind, and I can't stress enough, you know, listen and flip that switch in your head. yeah. So.